Coming up this week in work.
LinkedIn CEO has just published a list of 5 skills he says will protect your career from AI. So what are these new skills and how do we develop them in ourselves and hire them in others?
Also this week, Mark Zuckerberg's been at it again, and it's one of the stranger stories in tech this week. Do you know what? I'll just explain it all exactly what he's been up to very shortly.
And in Truth or Lie, extroverts make better leaders. Think people like Churchill, Steve Jobs, Oprah. The leaders we celebrate are charismatic and commanding, but does the research actually back that up? Well, I've taken a look, and unsurprisingly, Al, I've got a verdict.
And in the workplace surgery, one listener is asking, should I bother with engagement surveys, or am I just measuring problems instead of fixing them? Valid question.
This is Truth, Lies and Work, the award-winning podcast where behavioural science meets workplace culture, brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals.
My name is Al, I'm a business owner, and I'm here to ask the questions you might be afraid to.
And my name is Leanne, I'm a chartered occupational psychologist, and I am here to answer them. And together we help you simplify the science of work and build amazing workplace cultures.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. Hello, welcome back. Lee, you're back. You're in the UK, weren't you?
I was back in the UK and it was flipping freezing.
Yes.
Like, I know it's still April, but it was like 4 degrees at one point.
Yeah.
Chilly. But no, I really enjoyed it. I didn't really do any work at all. I'm really behind on my emails. So anyone who I've not emailed back, Jake, I'm thinking of in particular, I'm really sorry, mate. I'm getting to it, but I tried to practice what I preach and I didn't check my emails and I didn't really get on LinkedIn. I just completely switched off and had lovely times with friends and fam. So, I'm working my way through it. But we've also had another slight distraction from work.
So about an hour before I was due to take Leanne to the airport, I was out with the dogs, came back to the car, and there was a little puppy who'd just fallen asleep in the wheel arch, or actually with his head through the alloy wheel. And luckily, I spotted it when I arrived and I checked to see whether it was still knocking about. And luckily, I did check, because otherwise, if I'd set off, things wouldn't have ended well for it.
No, it wouldn't.
So I did what every normal person would do and thought, right, tried to find the owner and then brought it back. And so we're looking after it now, trying to find a home for it. Very, very beautiful little thing. So confident.
Yeah.
So cute.
She's really cute. She's like the Andrex puppy. Anyone from the UK, the Andrex advert, she looks exactly like the Andrex puppy.
You understand,
but minier.
Yeah, you also understand, though, that you say the Andrex puppy, but you say if you're from the UK. But if you're from the UK and you are like 35 years old or older.
Are the Andrex puppies not still in the adverts?
Are they not? I don't know.
I don't know.
UK advert for a long time.
If only there's a way to find out.
Yes, so we've been a little distracted. Currently, we're hoping that the chew we've just given her is going to last for about an hour while we finish this recording. But if you are interested, then maybe drop us an email or something and we'll send you some pictures of this lovely little pup. Very, very cute.
Yeah, she's very sweet and we're looking that she can travel as well. So if you are abroad and you want a dog, we might be able to help. And also breaking news, 2026, the Andrex puppy does still remain a central figure in the Andrex campaign.
Not the same one, though, as from I remember from the 90s.
I think it's probably a slightly different pup.
Unless it's been on that guy's Eternal Life podcast and is now taking supplements and is just staying the same age.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even buy that, to be honest, because I think he looks kind of old. Do you not think, though? Looks a bit like he's been moulded like children.
Face.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he does a little bit. And also he talks a lot about directions, which I'm not really a fan of.
Yeah, it got to get to the point, hasn't it, where if you're focusing so much on staying alive, you're not spending enough time living.
Oh, now that's a great point. A great point. Just before we go into the news roundup, I just want to say hello to our friend Richard Clark. He's been a guest. Have we had him on yet, or is he going on? I can't remember.
No, he's
coming
due
up.
out. I can give you the date if you're
While
interested.
Leanne's looking, I will just say that he sent us a really, really lovely email. He said, I think you guys are really good, like properly good. And he said, you've kicked Adam Grant off my podcast list.
Shut the door.
I know. So that's genuinely, Richard, one of the best compliments you could give us.
Wow, that's probably the greatest accomplishment of my career.
I believe it might be. I mean, yeah.
Because there's one person out there that thinks I'm better than Adam Grant, and I'll take it.
Also, he asked about my story, so I sent him back to episode 16, and he reckons that it should be a mini documentary. So there we go. Anyway.
I agree. If you haven't heard Al's story about how he went from from kind of budding. What you were in the 40 under 40, weren't you?
Yeah, 42 under 42.
42 under 42. From that to
Bankruptcy.
a lot of bankruptcy. And then bouncing back.
Yeah.
It's quite the story. Go check it out. What episode was it again?
Episode 16, early days.
16. And Richard, your episode is going to be with us on the 21st of May.
Lovely, lovely. Okay, so talking of things upcoming, I believe it is that time of the week. It's your favourite time of the week. What time is it, Leanne?
It's time for the news roundup. I'll cue the jingle.
Jingle is cued. Leah, what have you seen?
5 skills LinkedIn says will AI prove your career in 2026.
Okay, right. Go on.
So this one was actually reported in Inc. And based on a new book from LinkedIn CEO Ryan Roslansky. Is that how the Americans would say it? I want to say Roslansky, but I'm guessing it's Roslansky.
Sure. If you're listening, Ryan,
And
drop us an email.
also the Chief Economic Opportunity Officer, Anish Raman. So the idea is this. AI, as we know, is already reshaping work, and that's going to continue. But it's not going to replace work, and it's not going to replace our role in it. Instead, as people, we're going to get ahead if we can lean into the things that are the hardest to automate, so the very human side of work, as we've had previous conversations about on the show before. In this book, they have tried to simplify that into 5 core capabilities that they call the 5 C's.
Right.
And I think there's a joke in here around some tech leaders being like the 5 C's.
Right.
But I'm not quick enough to get to it, nor am I allowed to swear at that level.
Fair enough. Okay.
So I'll move on.
So just so I'm clear, these 5 C's are more like traits of a job that cannot be taken rather than actual job titles. Is that right?
No, these are capabilities that an individual, the skills that an individual can develop to be AI proof in 2026.
Let's get to it.
And you'll like this, Al, because they all begin with C.
Yes, I like that.
The first is curiosity. So the idea is that AI can generate answers, but it still needs someone to decide what questions are worth asking, which ideas are worth pursuing, and where to focus attention. So their argument is that the real advantage sits with people who stay open, keep learning, and actively try to understand how these tools fit into their work.
Makes sense.
The second is courage, which sounds a bit abstract, but they're basically grounding it in decisions made every day. So it's about acting without having perfect information, suggesting better ways of doing things mid-project, or challenging people if it doesn't quite feel right. Their idea being that in a world that's changing very, very quickly, waiting for certainty just isn't an option. Then we have creativity. So they're talking about the ability to come up with something new, not just reworking what already exists. And their point is that it isn't limited to creative roles. It's just as relevant. Creativity is just as relevant in operations, sales, products, etc. The fourth is compassion, which is how we work with other people. So understanding context, building trust, and finally communication. They said, especially in moments of uncertainty, being able to explain what's happening, make sense of change, and bring people with you is going to be really important. What is quite interesting about apparently how they've arrived at this is they haven't just decided it themselves. They've spoken to neuroscientists and org psychs and behavioural economists and talent leaders, and this is the list that they've got to. So it's not the things that AI can replicate, it's the things that are actually quite human. Thoughts, Alistair?
Full name be there. I'm going to push back a little bit then, because I think you said understanding context and noticing when someone's struggling. I think AI, I've noticed Claude does that a lot better these days. So if I'm like, no, I've still not got this problem solved, they'll go, oh, don't worry, you're not being stupid. This is what the problem is. So I think that can be faked. Creativity, goodness, well, genuine creativity as in like creating something that's amazing. Yes, AI probably isn't going to be great at starting from the beginning, but with Claude Design being delivered this week and all sorts of stuff happening, and the number of times I think I'm quite a creative person, but the number of times I go in and go, I've got this idea, this is what I've got up so far, and Claude will go, well, what about these other 3 things? And I'll go, yeah, that's a great idea, never thought of that. I know it's pattern matching, so I don't know. I mean, I don't think these are quite as clear cut as maybe they might want them to be.
Yeah, I must admit, I was expecting something a bit more impactful when I saw the headline. And the thing that also kind of made me squint a bit is these aren't really new. Like we talk about, they call them capabilities, they're competencies in psychology research, which are usually very much linked to behavior. And in terms of competencies, there's loads of research in terms of how many there could possibly be and all the frameworks. And these 5 really echo to me what's called the Great 8 competencies. Have you heard of this?
No.
So it's from an organisation called SHL, which is a big testing psychometric organisation. And they've done loads of research to come up with the Great 8, which basically is just mapped years of research around workplace behaviour and condensed it into 8 competencies. And when you line them up, they're kind of similar. So they had curiosity, SHL has analysing and interpreting, courage, leading and deciding, creativity, creating, compassion, supporting cooperation, communication, interacting and presenting. So it kind of felt this is already stuff that's out there and has already been important. But they also missed out 3 of the Great 8. And one I thought was really, really, really important, adapting and coping. So how to handle pressure and uncertainty. Is there anything we need more in the AI world? So I don't know. I just kind of thought it isn't really new. It's definitely packaged up in a world of AI. But I think it's also got some holes in it.
Yeah. See, now, maybe because adaptability didn't begin with C. So that's why I didn't make it in there.
I mean, obviously, this is just a little extract from a full book that I have not read.
Yeah.
Full disclosure. So the book may go into this. But equally, I'd want this, if it does, I'd want this picked up in the media, is that these are all, they're all really nice, very human competencies, aren't they? But as you've actually pointed out, Al, depending on how broad we are in how we talk about these, AI, Claude can do them. What I'd be much more excited about hearing from tech leaders, particularly LinkedIn, which is, still traditionally a careers professional networking website, is what that looks like in terms of actual jobs that involve AI and what the human aspect of creativity looks like compared to the AI aspect, and why it's important that organizations retain people with these skills and don't replace them with AI. I think that would give a lot more reassurance and clarity around actually how to AI proof ourselves. It all seemed to be a little bit generic, and I'm guessing that's because at the moment we don't really know. We don't really know. But it was nice to see tech leaders talking about competencies. And maybe this is a point where we'll actually start recruiting for them rather than just asking people those really annoying questions like, if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?
Yeah.
I'd be a weeping willow because of the state of the world right now.
That's sad. Well, let me cheer you up with a story about our favourite crazy billionaire, Mark Zuckerberg. So it was in The Guardian this week that Meta, which is the company that owns Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp. I'm sure you all know that. They know that. They're building a digital Mark Zuckerberg so employees don't have to wait for the real one. So basically,
I'm going to stop you there. I don't think we need 2 Mark Zuckerbergs. I think 1 is more than enough.
It is. And also, I'm sorry, but Mark does come across a little bit like a droid already. So I'm not necessarily sure we need another one. But yes, so apparently Meta's training this AI clone of Zuck on his mannerisms, tone and public statements so that employees can query him directly. So what made me think of was basically, remember Clippy, the paperclip?
Yeah, in Word. Never really knew the answer to much, really.
No, Clippy was pretty freaking useless. But I'm just thinking we've got a Zucky. That's maybe what it's going to be called, a Zucky.
Zucky.
He'll just pop up and say, "I see that you're trying to mine public data. Let's see if I can help you with that." Anyway, so apparently he's actively involved in training his own avatar. He's using his images and voice. Again, maybe just slightly tweaked the voice, add a little bit of character to it. I'm sorry, Zuck, but come on. Meta sees this as a template for creators and influencers, The Guardian says. Basically, what it sounds a bit like is that they're trying this out for Zuck, and then potentially they can add another string to their bow where they can create AR avatars for other businesses. So you'll get a Bezos, you'll get a Tim Cook, although he has just announced he's leaving this week, I think, Tim Cook from Apple.
Really? Retiring?
Yeah, I worked out he must be like 66,
105.
67. He's not as old as you think. He's a bit like, do you remember Naked Gun, Leslie Nielsen? And you watch Police Squad from back in the 60s or 70s, and he was 150 back in the 70s, and then in the 90s he looked just the same. Anyway, that's not my point. So apparently he's also been supported by something they've built in Meta, which is called a CEO agent, which is a personalized AI that feeds him eternal company info faster. This is all part of his push, apparently, to flatten the organisation and get more done. Come on, dude, you've done enough. You've done plenty. Anyway, all of this while Meta's facing $164 billion in, or maybe pounds, in penalties last month for misleading consumers and enabling child exploitation, apparently. They've got full AI sprint mode and a massive legal crisis all at the same time. Lee, what are your thoughts?
Do you know what? I've been watching the latest series of The Morning Show recently. Are you fully up to date with it? No. Okay.
No, I think I'm at least one, if not two seasons behind.
Really? Okay. So being really vague then, so no spoilers. I think Mark has got this idea from The Morning Show because one of the CEOs in that show creates an AI version of themselves with the idea that they then have AI versions of all different members of staff for this exact reason. So I think Mark's been sat there watching The Morning Show with a cup of tea going, I'm going to do that. It didn't end well.
Right.
In The Morning Show. So it ended pretty freaking badly, actually. So I can't wait to see how this turns out.
Lee, well, the link is in the show notes. Lee, what else have you seen, my love?
Would you read a complaint letter from your employee if it was 2,000 words long?
You fell asleep. That's from Friends, in case you don't know. 8 sides, double. Anyway, I don't know. Yes, of course I would.
Of course you would.
Zuck wouldn't. Zuck would just feed it into Claude. But...
Yeah, he would. Well, he'd get his other clone to do it. But then that clone's going to be too busy as well, isn't it? And there'll end up being like 200 of him. It'll be like, Mark 196 might have a couple of minutes later on this afternoon.
Anyway.
Do you know what? It's a nice contrast to what Mark's doing.
Right. By
basically creating a digital version of himself to spend time with staff. This one comes from Business Insider, and it was looking at the DoorDash CEO, Tony Zhu, who says he actually likes getting long, detailed emails from customers and staff because it gives him all the data he needs to make changes within his business. So he was speaking on a podcast with David Zenra and said that those longer messages are where the real insight is. The short ones often don't give him enough to work with, but the long ones is where he finds a lot of gold. So he said that the staff, which they are called dashers, will explain step by step where the system broke for them. I think the customers are called dashers as well. Also why the logistics didn't work, what happened in the real world versus what the app expected to happen. And he doesn't just read them, he actually, in some cases, will go into the backend systems himself and track orders and debug the issues step by step to try and figure out what's actually going on. And DoorDash is a pretty big company now, right? So he's surely got a lot of other things to do. He also said that he gets hundreds of messages every week. Many of them aren't positive. And he likes that as well because he reckons the greatest killer of a business is usually silence. If people have taken the time to write in, then it means they care enough to flag a problem.
Totally agree. I mean, it's like any kind of review site. So if you go into Amazon reviews, if someone leaves a 1-star review and then 6 paragraphs, that's gold because they care enough to go on there and say how bad it was. Usually the 3-star reviews aren't very interesting unless, again, there's lots of paragraphs there. So I think they often say, though, that the opposite of love isn't hate, is ambivalence. And I think that is the issue with a lot of people, is that if they care deeply about something, then even if they hate it, they still care deeply enough about it, and that gives you some rich insights. And I think this is very, very smart. And I suppose it might be different for a founder. Did he actually create the company? Anyway.
Oh, I don't know.
My thinking is, if you're a founder and you get those kind of emails, that's quite personal because they're sort of having a go at what you've created. But if you are just the CEO, then...
He is a founder.
Right. Well, even better. Well done, dude. What's his name? Zhu?
Tony Zhu, yeah.
Tony Zhu.
Along with Andy Fang, Stanley Tang and Evan Moore.
Oh, brilliant. That sounds like the world's best legal firm. Fang, Tang, Zhu and Moore. Is that right?
Yeah.
Fang, Tang, Zhu and Moore. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it.
It sounds like do the fandango. Thunderbolt and lightning.
Also, FANG, I think, is the acronym for Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. Is that a really good example of non-nominative determinism? We talked about that, didn't we? Maybe. It should be Fang de Fang to include DoorDash. Anyway, link is in the show notes, I'm guessing.
Yeah, sure. I'll leave it there. And let us know. Get in touch. Are you team Zuck or team Zoo? What?
Zoo or Zuck? I love this. What? Zoo or Zuck?
Zuck or Zoo.
Zuck or Zoo.
Do you think we should be using AI to just, I guess, give people access to us at scale, albeit in a very unpersonal digital way? Or do we expect founders to want to take the time to actually boots on the ground and figure out what's going on? I think it's no surprise which team I am.
Yes, and I'm that team too. Okay, we were going to take a very short break, and after the break, we've got a truth or lie, which is Leanne is going to debunk for us. I really like this one this week. I say that as if I don't like the other ones. I like all of them, but this one's very good. So don't go anywhere, and we'll see you in a second. Welcome back to Truth or Lie. It's that time of the week where we take a popular workplace idea and ask Leanne if the research actually backs it up. Fun fact, it's not always Leanne. We had Dr. Jake on 2 weeks ago. We had the women from...
Alexis Sana did our Truth or Lie last week.
And then we've got another guy coming up, Chris, who I think everyone's going to really like. He's got a really, really good one. Anyway, this week. Come on, I'll stick to it this week. So the claim is extroverts make more effective leaders. And to be fair, it's pretty easy to see where that's come from, because you think of Winston Churchill or Steve Jobs or Richard Branson or Oprah or Sheryl Sandberg. These kind of people are the sort of people we celebrate as being magnetic and commanding, and the sort of people who walk into a room and just fill it. But is it actually true? So, Leanne, are extroverts more effective leaders than introverts? Truth or lie?
You know how I like to just start by nailing down exactly what we're talking about.
Yes. So just fast forward 30 seconds. Don't worry.
So there's two definitions here that we need to agree on before we move on. So first of all, what do we mean by extroversion? And second, what do we mean by effective leadership? So extroversion, as it is rightly defined, don't be giving this Myers-Briggs nonsense. Extroversion is one of the big 5 personality traits. And the big 5, and this is important, is a trait-based approach to personality. So trait means we sit on a continuum. So introversion is one end, extroversion is the other, and we all sit somewhere on that continuum. Whereas Myers-Briggs would want to put you in the box. So you're either extrovert or you're introvert, and never the two shall meet. So in this context, and in any useful context, any correct context, extroversion is one of the big 5 personality traits. According to research, extroversion as a definition is basically when someone is orientated towards the external world. So extroverts really like social attention. They get that through being assertive and sociable and dominant in a lot of cases. They get energy from being around people, and they're biologically wired for what psychologists call higher reward sensitivity, which basically means they're naturally driven to seek status. Introversion is basically the opposite. So it's an orientation towards the inner world of ideas and feelings. And introverts are quieter and usually more emotionally reserved. And they recharge through spending time alone rather than being around lots of people. So that's what we mean by the definition of extroversion: assertive, sociable, dominant. Effective leadership, and the definition of that is a little bit trickier because how long is a piece of string? But the research basically splits it into 2 things. We're talking about leader emergence. So that's whether somebody looks like a leader and whether others see them in that way. And then we've got leader effectiveness, which is basically looking at whether the leader's team actually performs. And it's important to know as well that these 2 things don't always match.
Right.
So somebody can look like a leader and emerge as a leader, but not be very effective in terms of team performance.
Okay.
Another idea, I guess, worth flagging that I'm not going to go into because we have talked about it before is the idea that leaders are born and not made. We have done that as a truth or lie before. It kind of feeds into this whole great man theory. Go back to the episode. I will find it and put it in the show notes if you're interested in that specific slant on it. I'm not really going to dip into that today. Are we clear?
Yes, we're clear. I like this. We've defined everything, and we don't even need to define the word definition because you've told us what that means. So yes, I think we're all on the same page here, Lee. I like it.
Good. We're all in the car. So the case for the strongest evidence comes from a 2002 study by Timothy Judge and some of his mates. Rather than running a single experiment, they looked across 73 different studies and basically asked, if we add all this up, what does it tell us? What's that called, Al?
Do you know what? I'm sorry, I was distracted. Give me the question again. Give me the question again.
So rather than running a single study, they looked at 73 separate studies.
Oh, so they did. So they did a meta-analysis.
They did. They did, which is, and I know we talk about it a lot, but we like them because it's a very reliable way to kind of draw conclusions, because you're not kind of relying on one study, you're looking at a bigger sample of people and different settings. What they basically found was that extroversion was the single strongest personality predictor of leadership.
Right.
So they measured the strength of that relationship using what we call a correlation. Correlation is basically a number between 1 and 0. 0 meaning two things have nothing in common. 1 meaning they are perfectly correlated. You move, she moves, soulmates kind of thing. And typically we'll get a number somewhere in between. They got a correlation of 0.31. And do you remember our little trick out? If you square a correlation, you get the predictive percentage.
Yes, so 0.31 times 0.31 is 10%.
Exactly. So extroversion accounts for around 10% of what determines whether someone is seen as a leader. So what the researchers looked at here is leader emergence.
Mm-hmm.
It might not sound like very much, but across every personality trait, researchers tested, nothing predicted leadership more consistently than extroversion.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So even though it's only 10%, it's actually, that's one of the highest things that predict leader
personality aspects
of leader emergence.
Yes.
Not necessarily of leader effectiveness.
Yes.
Okay.
So a larger review in 2019 pulled together 97 different studies, and that looked at 165 different work-related variables. What's that in English, please? Of course, it's things like job performance, motivation, communication, satisfaction, and leadership effectiveness. So extroversion in this meta-analysis was linked to better outcomes in 90% of the workplace factors. So for leadership specifically as well, in terms of leadership effectiveness, the correlation was 0.34, which is around 12% of what drives leadership ratings. So this is how individuals would rate the effectiveness of their leader.
Okay.
2 of the studies looked at how all this works in practice. A 2022 study found that extroverted leaders tend to be more engaged at work, so they're more energized and more invested, and that engagement translates into better team performance. Then we have a study following almost 400 military leaders over 2 years. What's that called, Al?
A longitudinal study?
Yes, it is.
Danny Wareham would like that, military study.
He would. They found that extroversion predicted effectiveness through something very specific, and that was their leaders' own confidence in their ability to lead. So if a leader felt confident, that confidence shaped how they performed.
Okay.
We then have some research on transformational leadership. That's the style associated with inspiring and motivating people, which we probably associate with these extroverted leaders like Steve Jobs and Oprah. They found that extroversion is the strongest personality predictor. So extroverts tended to come across as charismatic, and charisma sits at the heart of transformational leadership. So the case for the claim is fairly real, actually, because we've got some large samples here across settings. Extroversion consistently points towards leadership.
And that makes sense because you feel like the Steve Jobs coming on a stage. I hope no one clips that. Just Steve Jobs appearing on a stage, and then you're almost like you're enthralled by it. So you sit there, and like Tony Robbins is another example where you just sit there and assuming you agree with what he's doing, you're like, oh my God, this guy's a god.
Do you think that's still a thing, or do you think this falls into now like millennial Gen X cringe that the Gen Zs and Alphas would talk about? Because I'm thinking about, have you seen that film Don't Look Up?
Yes, I think so. George, no.
With like Meryl Streep, and there's the and Jennifer, what's her name?
Garner?
No, other one, Lawrence.
Right.
And there's the asteroid and it's going to hit Earth.
Oh, I think so.
And the tech leader in that who like comes on stage with like and it's like, ooh,
Cringy.
I just wonder if that's a bit that now. I don't know.
Oh, I bet it is. We'll never know because we never hang around with these people. They're not interested in us at all.
No,
if you're under the age of 20, let us know whether
20? I think under 30 is Gen Z,
really?
isn't
See,
it?
I told you how I was touched. Anyway, right, back to the thing. So that was the argument for.
Yeah.
If you left it at that, I'd be like, right, okay, I agree. 100%. This is that an extroverted person will be a great leader. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, and that's often where the trouble lies, is that people read one source of information or verdict on something and then go, right, well, there you go, I know the answer, without critically analysing what else is out there, Al, which is what we do, which is why this segment works so well. Don't you think?
Yes. Well, the look in your eyes suggesting that we've got the for now, have we?
Yeah.
No, the against.
No, that's the for.
That's the for. So now let's have the against.
To the against. So the cracks in this start to appear when we actually ask the question, if we're looking at leaders, whose teams are actually performing better.
Right.
So forget about emergence, forget about how their direct reports might rate them in terms of effectiveness. How is the team actually performing? Mm-hmm. Now, our good friend Adam Grant did some research on this in 2011.
Whose podcast has just been knocked off one of our listeners' lists.
Yes, a shame.
It's been a mixed week for you, Adam, really, isn't it? Sorry, what did Adam say?
What you should really do, Adam, is actually come on the podcast and then we can set some of this straight. Anyway, Adam did some wonderful work with some of his friends back in 2011, and they tracked actual store profits across 57 pizza delivery branches over 7 weeks. They found that it depended entirely on the team in terms of how effective the leader was. So when employees were happy to follow instructions, extroverted managers produced better results. But when employees were proactive, they were regularly coming up with ideas and changes, extroverted managers actually performed worse and the quieter managers outperformed them. Mm. They then tested this in a lab with 163 participants and they got the same result. The reason, they said, came down to the idea that proactive employees felt that extroverted leaders weren't really listening and there wasn't much room for their ideas, whereas quieter leaders made more space. So basically, the best results came when the leader's style matched the team's behavior. Mm. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay. So a bit more recent, 2022, added another layer to this. The energy and drive extroverted leaders bring is most useful when goals are vague and the path is a bit uncertain. So when an organization is very sure about where they are, they have very clear processes, lots of structure, lots of clear defined goals, the advantage of being an extrovert completely pretty much disappears. So extroverts are kind of good when nobody knows what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Then we have a Norwegian study, Carlson and Langvik. I just wanted to say Langvik.
Nice.
They looked inside extroversion itself and broke it down a little bit more. So as we said in our definition, there's different components to being an extrovert. So they actually looked at these individual components. So they looked at assertiveness, which is like speaking up, taking charge, pursuing goals. That was linked to better leadership outcomes. But excitement seeking, so that desire for novelty and risk, was rated negatively by teams on how well their leader managed people and got results. The study was relatively small, so we need to approach those with some caution. But what's really interesting about this one and important about this one is that the researchers made the point that extroversion isn't one thing. It's a few different, it will translate to a few different behaviors. It will have different impacts in terms of leadership. And this is where we kind of shift away from personality and into behavior research, because behavior is actually what plays out in the organization, isn't it? Rather than how we prefer to recharge ourselves or kind of where we feel at our best selves, it's how those traits actually translate into behavior. Then the research I wanted to pull up on this comes from Beverly Alimo Metcalf and Robert Alban Metcalf.
Wait, I know this. Mm-hmm. Bev and Bob. I know this. This is Juliet Alban Metcalf, the one she was our guest about 6 weeks ago.
Yes, she was. She comes from a very strong psychology dynasty, just Juliet. And this is genuinely groundbreaking research, groundbreaking leadership research. It was in the UK. It looked at the public sector and almost 1,500 managers. And they asked them to describe the behaviours of the best leader they'd ever worked with directly. And the single most powerful factor, which explained twice as much variance as all other factors combined, was genuine concern for others.
Oh.
So these were things like listening, supporting development, showing real interest in individuals was so important. Whereas things like charisma, inspiration, the qualities that were most associated with extroversion were far less effective. So bear in mind, as I said, genuine concern explains twice as much variance as all of the factors combined together.
Wow.
And we know that that is something that's typically a behaviour we see more from introverted people.
Oh, so this is a plot twist.
It is a plot twist. There's also research, and I can't remember whether it was this specific research or whether it was a follow-up study from Bev and Bob. But I can't. I'm so sorry, Juliet, if you're listening.
Bev and Bob?
From them. That actually was one of the few studies to actually show causation. So we talk a lot about correlation. They actually dug deeper and found causation in terms of organizational performance around this behavior model. Anyway, moving then to, I guess, keeping with this kind of behavior theme, there was a large 2024 meta-analysis that found a pattern behavior called honesty, humility, which is treating people fairly, avoiding exploitation, not seeking status for one's own sake. And that predicted leadership effectiveness with a correlation of 0.25. When you added that to the standard personality model, that doubled the amount of leadership effectiveness researchers could explain from 4% to 10%.
Interesting.
So when you kind of combine these behaviors with personality, we get some real weight in terms of predicting leadership effectiveness. One final thing, I guess, to say on this kind of as against, most studies measure leadership effectiveness by asking people to rate their leader. And that isn't always very effective because there was a 2007 analysis that found those ratings were shaped by what people expect a leader to look like. So what stereotypical visions do we have of leaders? So if they're loud and gregarious like Steve Jobs walking around on stage, we see that as an effective leader. Extroverts fit that, so we tend to rate them higher in terms of our perception of what a leader should be.
Excellent. Okay, I get that. So I think from what you said there, I'm veering towards it is a lie, but what's the actual official stamp on this?
You're
Truth
right,
or lie?
Al. You're right. It's a lie, or at least it's not enough of a truth to be useful, because the evidence for the claim is kind of real. Extroversion is the single strongest personality predictor of leadership across decades of research. But there's two kind of problems with that oversimplification. The first is the numbers themselves. So even as the strongest personality predictor, it still only explains 10% of what makes somebody an effective leader. There's a whole 90% of a pitch that has nothing to do with extroversion and more than likely nothing to do at all with personality. Personality is not a very effective predictor of leadership effectiveness. And as we've said, the second is actually what's being measured. So yes, there is a strong relationship between extroversion and leader emergence, but leader emergence, looking like a leader and being seen like a leader, does not necessarily, and in most cases, doesn't translate to being effective in terms of team performance. So I've kind of gone, it could be, it depends, I guess, technically, but I'm like, no, it's a lie. Because the fact is, if you're a business leader out there who wants to hire a leader, the last thing that you probably want to look at is introversion or extroversion. Neither are particularly standalone as personality traits effective in terms of predicting future performance. But what we do know is that the behaviours are what we call pro-social behaviours, things like listening, genuine concern for people, creating space, is one of the biggest predictors of effective leadership in terms of actual team performance, which is where I always kind of prefer behaviour-based assessment tools in recruitment as opposed to personality.
Beautiful. I love that. Because I honestly thought it was going the other way. I think there's lots of people you can think of who are outgoing and you'd be like, yeah, they're born leaders. Look at them. Like we talked about the eldest as well, didn't we? At one point, I think, saying they're born leaders. And you can get it, but no, it makes perfect sense. It makes absolutely perfect sense. So maybe Zuck is actually, because he's a slightly more introverted, which means actually you've just told me you can't do that. You just said you can't go, he's extroverted, she's introverted, and therefore...
Yeah, and my question is Mark Zuckerberg creating a digital clone of himself showing genuine concern for people?
No.
I don't know, maybe. Depends how good that clone is and how it's used, I guess. But it doesn't scream, I really care about my people.
No, unless he's actually going, there's not enough of me to listen to everyone, so I'm creating this. But even then, you're going to do something in the aggregate with the data.
It doesn't have to just be you, does it? As a singular one person.
Fabulous.
Anyway,
Thank you so
maybe
much.
we should do narcissism next.
Oh, maybe. Why'd you look so much at me when you said that?
No, I was looking at Mark.
Okay, so we've got another one of those coming up next week. If you have your own that you'd like us to either, maybe it's a question for Leanne, or maybe you are some kind of fancy schmancy scientist and you want to come on, like Chris, who's coming on, I think it's next week or week after, I can't remember. We've got Dr. Jake coming back. We've got loads of people in the pipeline to come and give you one of these truth or lies. If it sounds like you, drop us a line.
Yeah.
Be interested. Okay, so I think it's on to our world-famous weekly workplace surgery where I put your questions to Leanne. Leanne, I have 3 questions, as would be my one. Question number 1, should I bother with engagement surveys? So this person says, I've been thinking about introducing engagement surveys into my business, but a conversation with another business owner has made me doubt myself. Their view was that surveys cost time, money, and don't really lead to meaningful change. It's made me question whether I'm just measuring problems rather than fixing them. So I'm unsure, are they actually worth doing, or am I better off focusing on other ways to understand how my team are feeling? We should have got Bill Yost in for this one. But go on. Channel your inner Bill Yost. Tell us what your thoughts are, Lee.
Can I challenge my inner Leanne instead? Because I do this stuff too, you know.
Yes, that's a good point. I'm sorry, Leanne.
It's okay.
Oh, no.
Bill's better than me.
Bill's got a pirate flag.
What would Bill say?
What would Leanne say?
Surveys, yeah, they do cost time and money, and they're not going to lead to any meaningful change as a survey alone. A survey is a diagnostic, and it'll help you understand the problem you're trying to solve. So if your colleague, this fellow business owner, is running a survey expecting it to drive change, then respectfully, they're doing it wrong. We just need to use surveys amongst other methods to help define the problem. John Amici talked about this in his book, and I thought it's a really nice way of putting it. The most powerful thing you can do for somebody who is lost is tell them where they are. And this is exactly what a really great engagement survey or psychosocial risk survey or culture survey will do. It will tell you exactly kind of what's working within your business right now, what's not working so well, and where the real risk hotspots are, so you can design bespoke interventions to actually target the problem and drive some meaningful change. So I guess to answer your question succinctly, yes, engagement surveys are worth doing to help you define the problem. You can use other ways to understand how your team are feeling. I would never use a survey just in isolation alone. I'd want to pair that with like focus groups or, conversations with the senior leadership team, an understanding of kind of systems and documentation within the organization to give a bit more context. They're really good ways of gathering this data as well. But either way, however you gather the data, acting on it is the most important thing. If you're going to gather feedback and do nothing with it, I promise you will do more damage. It's better just not bothering at all. So they are useful. There are other ways of gathering the data, but the most important thing is actually doing something with it.
Fabulous. Far better than what Bill Yost would have said.
I doubt it. I think he would have made a funny joke or compared, I don't know, brought in pirates or something.
Maybe. But I think that's a really good point that a lot of people think I'm going to do an engagement survey because I need to fix things. And like you've said, that's like going to the doctor and saying I've got a sore leg and them just going, it was, that's actually a bad example because the doctor would also tell you what was wrong and give you something to fix it. But that's a bad example.
But no, it's the right analogy. It's just the other way around, isn't it? So you wouldn't go to a hospital and a doctor just look at you and go, oh, you've got a broken leg and put you in a cast for 6 weeks. You'd expect them to do some investigation, some diagnostics before they do that. And that's what engagement surveys are. They're a diagnostic.
Thank you for rescuing my analogy there, Leanne. I appreciate it. Okay, on to question number 2. Is generational tension something I'm supposed to fix? So this person, the background of this person, they manage a mixed-age team and they've discovered the tension between younger and older employees becoming a real issue. So they say, my Gen Z team members set clear boundaries and want quick feedback and reasoning behind decisions. Some of the more experienced staff see that as entitlement or a lack of commitment. I'm finding myself spending more time managing the friction than the actual work. Is this something I'm responsible for, Leanne? As a manager, should I be fixing this? Thoughts?
Yes.
Cool. Question number 3. Why is it there? See, my instinct would be like, no, let them get on with it, because it's them who decided that the older people who decided that people are entitled, younger people are entitled, and the younger people have probably decided that the old people are just old farts who just don't know anything.
Yeah, but they're probably not going to get on with it without some kind of intervention to bring them together, is it? I think, right. I guess, first of all, it could be a generational thing. Those labels can be helpful, and if you look at them in terms of cohorts, they can also be unhelpful in terms of creating divides. So I'll be careful about how, when you're talking this through with the team, describing them as like Gen Z or Gen X or Boomers or whatever else. Because I think that the fact is, whether it's about age or not, what you're basically seeing is a clash of expectations about work. So you've got one group who really values clarity and feedback and firm boundaries, and others that really value autonomy and trust and a sense of earning authority and reputation. And both are actually pretty reasonable. None of them are, none of that's wrong. They've just been shaped in kind of different environments. So I think in terms of what you can do as a manager is kind of take these unspoken norms and start to articulate them. And it's what, we might call it, if you do it formally, like a team charter in terms of what good looks like, what's expected. Or you could just have this kind of general conversation about it. I think it's sometimes worth putting things down on paper or, in a document somewhere, just so you don't leave things open to interpretation. And it's defining things like, as a team, how quickly do we think people should get feedback? When is it okay to challenge decisions? What does good communication look like? And when you're having those conversations, it's important to kind of reframe all of them as strengths. So it's not that people are entitled, people are pushing for clarity and transparency. Or it's not that kind of, your Gen X's are rigid. It's just people who bring experience and judgment to a situation, and that should be respected. So I think having these kind of conversations and framing them very much as strength kind of shifts what is currently a conflict into how we could use our skills and strengths in a complementary way for the benefit of the team. I also think as well, we know from the research that in terms of engagement and performance, when we have different people with different experience working together, we see that diversity of thinking, and that does translate into higher engagement, high performance. So this is a really great opportunity for you, because what you now know is you have a diverse team, and diverse teams are really, really great to have. But the risk is leaving it with so much unstructured expectation around what the behaviours of that team should be. It can turn into some of the friction and incivility that you're seeing. So I think it's worth having that conversation and turning the situation into something that could be actually really useful for you as a manager, as an organisation, as a team.
I love it. Lee, you did a segment. If you're listening to the person who wrote this, and also you have a similar thing. They ended a little segment a little while ago, and I can't remember which one it was, but you said something like you gave some examples of what people said about a generation, and then there was, I won't spoil it, but there was some surprises. So it's quite a fun game you could play. So that sounds like something you definitely should go and listen to. Lee, are you ready for the final question?
Yes.
Okay, so this person is about to start a new job, and they're saying, what do I look out for in my first few weeks? So they say, I'm about to start a new job. I'm trying to go in with my eyes open. In those first few days or weeks, what are the signs you've joined a genuinely healthy workplace versus one that might be a bit of a disaster? What should you be paying attention to? Oh, this sounds like something you probably should have done before you accepted the job, perhaps. But anyway, who am I to say?
Yeah,
Lee,
maybe.
what are your thoughts?
I guess it's hard to get in there, really, isn't it? And get enough information. But you're right. You should have, done some due diligence by maybe getting in touch with people already working in the organisation. But the fact is, you've got a new job. Congratulations, my friend.
Congratulations.
Well done. And what I'd like this is kind of going into it in kind of like I'm in control of this situation. Whereas there can feel a lack of control, I guess, if you maybe feel like you've been misled at some point down the line. But so I like this. I think a healthy workplace as a new employee basically means that somebody's thought about your experience. You're not an afterthought. People are fairly consistent in what they say. So if you're going to different team members or leaders, the messaging is generally the same. And clarity. You know where you stand, what expectations are, and all that kind of good stuff. So in terms of structure, things to look out for, is there a clear onboarding plan? Ideally, they would have already given you that onboarding plan before you start, so you know what's going to happen. That's going to include things like time set aside for you actually to learn how things work, not just figure out as you go along, meeting key people. And it all feels intentional. You know, it's not just that people are like, oh, I'll look after you because I've got time today. There's some kind of intended structure to it. In terms of more clarity, what's expected to you, what's expected in the first 30 days, 90 days, what does success look like, what are the priorities of your job and how does that fit into the bigger priorities of the organisation? And I think really just does what you were sold match the reality that you're now in? So in terms of the culture, in terms of flexible working, in terms of any policies they promised you, in terms of what workload looks like, how the team interacts together, is going to be really important. And I think finally it's how people interact. Like, how do they talk when they're being honest, when the boss isn't in the room, when there may be a cup of tea or you're just over Slack or whatever else? Like, is the tone fairly positive? Is it fairly negative or cynical? Are people talking behind other people's backs? That's, you know, the obvious kind of signs of toxicity or some incivility. So I think they're the main things to look out for. But I think that first week is going to tell you a lot in terms of that onboarding plan. And even if it's not as structured as you would have liked, or if there's somebody genuinely interested in the experience you're having in your first week, I think that's a really good sign.
Excellent. You've just given us a masterclass on onboarding people there. That is brilliant. That should be, we should do something on that soon. I think
onboarding.
Yeah, I do think. I think in sales and marketing is one of the most important parts of it. When someone's just said yes, you want to be delighting them, and so but I think we probably just think, oh well, you know, Dave starts today. Oh well, there you go. There's our SOPs on a Google Drive. Go and watch these videos, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so if you have thank you, Leanne. If you have your own question that you want to put to Leanne, then check out the show notes. It's a way to get in touch with us. Next Thursday, or this Thursday actually, we're joined by Aidan Feeder. Funnily enough, I think Feeder is an Isle of Man name, and Aidan is Italian, so he's Isle of Italia.
Is he from the Isle of Man?
No, I think it maybe his mom is, and his dad's from Italy. Or something.
Have you ever been to the Isle of Man?
No, have you?
No.
Well, I have a friend who goes quite regularly because of the TT races, the motorbike races. Yeah. No,
I'd like to go, actually.
I should. We will go after this.
Okay.
Anyway, so Aidan is going to join us. One of the most incredible, I'm not going to spoil it, one of the most incredible founder stories you're going to hear this year, I think. So definitely stay tuned for that. Lee, anything else to add before let these good people go?
No, usual. All the links are in the show notes, including how to get in touch with the show. Come and follow along on LinkedIn. I was going to say Facebook then. Lol, we've not been on Facebook for 2 decades. Go over to LinkedIn, search for me, Al, Truth, Lies and Work. That's where the convo finishes. Don't forget to tag us in anything you see. We do mention it. We have a few things that people have sent in, like James Hardy sent in that his article, if you're interested in doing a truth or lie, it just makes our job easier because we don't have to find the content.
And also we can showcase some other amazing people.
Yes, that too.
Yes. Okay, right. So we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Oh, see you Thursday. Sorry, I got it wrong. See you Thursday. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.